We often think of these world-changing inventions as, the result of some brilliant plan, a targeted goal, a eureka moment that was years in the making. But what if I told you some of the most important innovations in our lives weren't planned at all? What if they were just mistakes?
Yeah, I know. It sounds like the start of a really weird joke, doesn't it? A candy bar turning to mush in a scientist's pocket, and a glue that was supposed to be ultra strong but turned out to be, well, pretty pathetic. On the surface, they're just completely unrelated screw-ups.
But they're not. They're two of the most incredible examples of accidental genius. Moments where a total mistake, something that went completely wrong, ended up changing the world in ways that absolutely no one could have ever predicted.
So how does this even happen? Is it just, pure blind luck? Well, not really. Turns out there's a pattern, a kind of formula behind these amazing happy accidents.
The key idea here is a great word, serendipity. And it's so much more than just luck. It's an active thing. It's about having the knowledge and the sharp-minded wisdom, what some call sagacity, to look at something that went wrong and go, hang on a second, what's really going on here?
And this is it. This is the core idea for our entire explainer today, from the famous scientist Louis Pasteur. Chance favors only the prepared mind. For most of us, a mistake is just a mistake. But for a prepared mind, a mind that's already soaked in a subject, that same mistake can be a doorway to a massive discovery.
Let's dive into our first case study, the microwave oven. This story proves the point perfectly, and it doesn't start in some fancy kitchen appliance lab. Nope, it starts in the middle of World War II with top-secret military tech.
Okay, so you've got this guy, Percy Spencer. He's a self-taught engineering wizard at a company called Raytheon. His main job was to figure out how to mass-produce magnetrons. These are the tubes that generate microwaves for radar systems. And he was so good at it, he took production from just 17 a day to over 2,600. So here's the point. Nobody on planet Earth knew more about magnetrons than Percy Spencer. His mind was uniquely, perfectly prepared.
So one day, he's standing in front of an active radar set, and he notices the candy bar in his pocket has turned into a sticky, gooey mess. Now, other people had felt warmth around these machines before and just, walked away. But Spencer's prepared mind saw something weird, an anomaly that just had to be investigated. His expertise drove him to figure out why. So he immediately tried it again, first with popcorn kernels, which went flying all over the lab, and then with an egg, which famously exploded right in his colleague's face.
So what was happening? Spencer figured out that the microwaves were basically making the water molecules inside the food go nuts. See, water molecules are polar. They have a positive and a negative end, kind of like tiny little magnets. The microwaves create this electric field that flips back and forth billions of times a second. And this makes the water molecules dance like crazy, trying to line up with the field. All that spinning and bumping into each other creates friction, and that friction is heat. It's a brilliant way to cook food from the inside out.
But the journey from that discovery to the microwave on your kitchen counter was a long one. The first commercial model, called the Radar Range, was an absolute beast. It weighed 750 pounds, stood almost 6 feet tall, and it generated so much heat that it had to be cooled with water. It needed its own plumbing.
And the price? Oh, you might want to sit down for this. In today's money, it would have cost you around $30,000. So not surprisingly, it was a huge commercial failure at first. It was only sold to places like restaurants and military bases. It actually took another 20 years of work to shrink it down and make it cheap enough for your home.
All right, let's jump to our next story, which is almost the complete opposite of the microwave. In this case, a scientist didn't accidentally find a solution to a problem. He invented a solution and then spent years trying to find a problem it could solve.
So, it's 1968, and a 3M scientist named Dr. Spencer Silver is given a huge task. Create an insanely strong glue, something tough enough to build airplanes with. He was going for the holy grail of adhesives. And what he actually created was, the exact opposite, a comically weak glue. But the chemistry behind it is fascinating. Instead of a glue that bonds flat and tight, he had accidentally made an adhesive out of tiny, tough polymer microspheres. Just picture a carpet of microscopic, sticky rubber balls. When you press it on paper, only the very tips of these balls touch the surface, so it sticks really lightly. But the spheres themselves are strong, so you can peel it off and stick it back down over and over again. Silver knew he had something special, but nobody else at 3M got it. Why would a company famous for super strong tape want a super weak glue?
For 5 long years, he went around the company showing it to everyone, but it just went nowhere. It was, for all intents and purposes, a failure.
And this is where the story gets good, thanks to a different prepared mind. Another 3M scientist, Art Fry, sang in his church choir, and he was getting super annoyed because his little paper bookmarks kept falling out of his songbook. Then he remembered going to one of Silver's talks about that useless weak glue, and click. He connected 2 totally different worlds, a failed chemical experiment and his choir problem. He realized this weak adhesive was the perfect thing for a bookmark that would stick but not damage the pages.
But even then, 3M management wasn't totally convinced, so the marketing team had this brilliant idea. The product was its own best advertisement. They launched something called the Boise Blitz and just flooded offices all over Boise, Idaho with free samples. The results were mind-blowing. Once people actually used the notes, 90% of them said they'd buy them. It was an absolute smash hit.
And you want to hear one last bit of serendipity? That canary yellow color, the one we all know, that wasn't picked by some focus group. When they needed to make the first big batch, the lab next door just happened to have a bunch of scrap yellow paper lying around. And that was that.
So, the big takeaway here is that these amazing stories of accidental genius, they're not really about just getting lucky. They follow a very clear pattern that, honestly, we can all learn from. First, you have to have the prepared mind. Percy Spencer and Spencer Silver knew their field so well they could see potential where others just saw a mess. Second, you have to actually investigate the weird stuff. Don't just ignore the melted candy bar or the failed glue. Third, you need persistence. My gosh, Silver pushed his idea for 5 years. And finally, you need a culture where people can collaborate, where an Art Fry can hear about someone else's solution and connect it to his own problem.
So that kind of leaves us all with a final thought to chew on. These stories teach us that innovation isn't always a straight line. Sometimes the most incredible ideas are hiding right in front of us, just disguised as our everyday mistakes and failures. The only question is, are our minds prepared to see them?
And that brings us to the end of this deep dive into accidental genius. We really hope it gave you a new way to look at the power of mistakes. Thank you so much for your time today. If you enjoyed this look into how accidents can change the world, let us know by hitting that like button. And we'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. What's another great accidental invention we missed? For more explainers like this, make sure you subscribe to InfoNow. We'll see you in the next one.